en compás. Hoy, en Alas. Despegue con The Discovery Channel en el F-15 Eagle de McDonnell Douglas. El presupuesto sin límites que acompañó el diseño del F-15 ha llevado a pensar que se trata del caza interceptor más potente de la historia de la aviación. Con la combinación de tamaño, fuerza y agilidad suprema, el F-15 se eleva listo para enfrentar cualquier reto. Hoy, vuele lejos con el F-15 de McDonnell Douglas en Alas.
FAA registró una aeronave a unos 65 kilómetros al suroeste de Tent City sin modos ni códigos. ¿Tienen aeronaves sobre esa zona? Gracias, Delta Bravo. Atención operaciones, aquí ID. CAT Zulu 235. 65 kilómetros al suroeste de Tent City sin posibilidad alguna.
Aquí Top Rock, codificación expedita, autenticación a las 19 horas 06 minutos codificado.
Es posible que el F-15 Eagle sea el avión superior disponible en el planeta. Podría pensarse que esta aeronave de máxima tecnología fuera tan solo el producto de varias décadas de constante refinamiento de unas especificaciones básicas. Pero, de hecho, esto no se acerca en nada a la realidad, ya que el Eagle es la respuesta a la combinación de dos problemas muy reales y muy recurrentes que tomaron por sorpresa a la Fuerza Aérea estadounidense.
The air war in Vietnam echoed a message that the Zeros of World War II and the MiG-15s of Korea had already proclaimed, that fighters must be able to fight other fighters. American fighter procurement till that time had provided the Air Force with two sorts of fighter aircraft. Planes that were excellent interceptors, able to cut off and destroy incoming enemy bombers, but not truly capable of taking on enemy fighters in a dogfight. Or planes that were excellent fighter bombers, aircraft that could fly at great speed and carry a very large and versatile weapons load, but again could only take on enemy fighters with the aid of heavy and expensive avionics and missilery. The nearest that the United States had to an answer to the MiG was the F-4 Phantom II. But even this superb aircraft was an ill match for the Russian-built planes in a dogfight. It achieved its excellent results through its superior avionics and with the standoff ability supplied by the second crew member with his weapons arrays. In Vietnam, it was the US Air Force's best fighter, with its great speed and the phenomenal lifting power and dependability of two engines. But even this aircraft could not outmaneuver the much lighter and often much older aircraft used by the North Vietnamese. The other alarming problem confronting the Air Force in the
alarmante que enfrentaba la Fuerza Aérea a mediados de los años 60 era el mismo problema observado en los B-17 de los años 30. Se necesitaba un bombardero capaz de superar en vuelo el despliegue operacional de cualquier casa norteamericana. A mediados de los años 50, el Comando Aéreo Estratégico emitió una especificación para un bombardero pesado de largo alcance que pudiese maniobrar tranquilamente a 3.200 kilómetros por hora. En ese entonces se consideró como objetivo una velocidad máxima hipotética. Aún así, produjo uno de los aviones más imponentes de todos los tiempos, el XB-70 Valkyrie. Este diseño brillante alzó vuelo a principios de los años 60, utilizando los nuevos avances disponibles en la tecnología aeroespacial de la época. Sus 6 enormes motores a propulsión se localizaban en un contenedor cuneiforme justo debajo del ala, que además acomodaba la fuente de energía y la carga baja. La forma de cuña contribuía de por sí a la potencia de la nave.
Its 6 enormous turbojet engines were contained in a wedge-shaped hull below the wing. As well as accommodating the power and the undercarriage, the wedged shape was itself a contributor to the aircraft's potency. At the speed of sound, this shape forced the shockwave outwards from the fuselage, a phenomenon that would have been of little value had not the Valkyrie been equipped with movable wingtips, which, lowered, trapped the shockwave, gaining extra lift and speed.
A la velocidad del sonido, esta forma obligaba a la onda de impacto a dirigirse hacia afuera desde el fuselaje. Este fenómeno hubiese tenido poco valor si el Valkyrie no hubiera contado con prominentes puntas de ala, que al bajarse atrapaban la onda de impacto, logrando así mayor elevación y velocidad. Esta estructura surgió de una teoría llamada el levante de compresión, que no solo demostró ser correcta, sino que le proporcionó al Valkyrie la cualidad de ser el mejor avión del momento.
The Russian weapons designers went to work on the problem. As it happened, Valkyrie was cancelled, but clearly Russian fighter designers continued to take its potential into account. In 1968, at the Domodov Air Show in Moscow, the Soviets demonstrated the expected array of military might. But at the end of the show, as a finale, 3 massive jet aircraft appeared and streaked across the sky. The crowd of foreign observers at the display was stunned by the size and apparent performance of the aircraft. Reports sifting back to the Pentagon on the new plane's proportions and size suggested a plane of awesome top speed. For the next few months, nothing more was seen of the plane, which had been given the NATO code name Foxbat. Then, high in the sky over Israel, an Israeli F-4 located an unidentified blip on its radar, and, on climbing higher to investigate it, found it was approaching one of the new Soviet aircraft. In the thin air over 60,000 feet, the Foxbat, seemingly oblivious to the presence of the Israeli plane, was slipping through the air using sophisticated sensors in its nose to record Israeli ground activity. The Phantom, itself a fast, high-flying aircraft, could only slowly approach the new Russian type, as both aircraft climbed still higher. The occasion was the first aerial encounter between a Western pilot and one of the new Mark, but the experience was cut short. The Phantom was already straining at top speed to slowly catch the other plane, but the Foxbat was in no way near fully extended. In a matter of seconds, the plane accelerated away, leaving the Phantom floundering. This superb plane was really a modification of the SR-71 Blackbird, capable of carrying missiles within an internal weapons bay. Only 3 examples of the YF-12 were produced, the design being used only in a reconnaissance role. By the late 1960s, the United States found itself clearly in the market for a new fighter. For some time previously, the McDonnell Company had been developing designs to fill the high-performance fighter role. Some would have variable geometry of the wings, and some utilize new shapes. But by 1969, they had settled on a basic design which walked away with the Air Force experimental fighter competition, with an order for 20 F-15s going to McDonnell on the 1st of January 1970. By the time the F-15 project was underway, the company had merged with one of its competitors to become the giant McDonnell Douglas. McDonnell was a relative newcomer to the aviation business. Established just 3 months before the outbreak of World War II, it used more of its wartime capacity to make parts and sub-assemblies for other aircraft companies. Poetically enough, among them was Douglas, which by that time was a well-established aircraft manufacturer, producing planes from the 1920s onwards. However, McDonnell Aviation, although a much smaller company, quickly gained a good reputation for reliability under the leadership of its founder, James McDonnell. Mr. Mack believed heavily in the team spirit, and this clearly gave results when it came to production. The first plane that McDonnell produced of their own was the XP-67, nicknamed the Bat. Only one example of this advanced design was ever produced, and this was to crash during its test period. But this rare film shows the concept was years ahead of its time, utilizing a fuselage that blended completely with wing and engine nacelles. 30 years later, well into the jet age, this concept was to become almost standard. But in 1940, some considered it too revolutionary. The Bat also had provision for placing jet engines behind two props, again clearly reflecting the advanced thinking of the fledgling St. Louis Aircraft Company. Although the Bat did not proceed, the team that had conceived it obviously impressed the military. McDonnell's operation grew, and they moved the plant to the edge of Lambert Field, which gave them access to a substantial runway. The company was determined to stay at the forefront of the new technology that was emerging in the post-war years. Technology that involved the jet engine that had quickly taken over from piston engines, and new designs using much better material than was ever available during the war years. But still, bringing them together with the company's philosophy of a team approach to problems, producing a design team that quickly won the respect of the military and competitors alike. These men are inspecting an F-101 Voodoo, a plane that would be a major success story for McDonnell, but, like many of its aircraft, a product of perseverance and commitment to an idea, rather than being built to a strictly confining government specification. As the 50s came and went, McDonnell survived, manufacturing exclusively to fill American military requirements. McDonnell's biggest success came with the development of the F-4 Phantom II. Like many of their other planes, conceived as a Navy fighter, but its versatility soon made it the standard fighter for all three of the American air arms, the only plane ever to do so. Now the St. Louis plant was to produce a new shape. The F-15 design would be subjected to the most critical tests of any aircraft, and templates and models were made to confirm the concept's viability. Slowly, the prototype began being pieced together like a huge three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. Testing and refining still continued as the plane evolved. Here, a prototype is seen in the paint shop in the last stages of production. The Air Force officer in charge of the F-15 project gives his thoughts on the team effort.
I have never seen a finer joint government-industry team that's organized with the technical competence to carry out the job that's been assigned to them, or to do it in a manner of close-knit teamwork.
Before an invited audience, the first F-15 was rolled out on the 26th of June, 1972.
I christen the Eagle, and may you reign supreme in your domain.
Hear, hear.
La cabina levantada del Eagle le proporciona el mejor campo de visión disponible desde el Sabre. Como los primeros Eagle llevarían un solo piloto, este debía tener la mejor visibilidad posible. Aquí vemos los ingresos variables de aire del Eagle, una característica sofisticada que le permite a su computadora optimizar la provisión de aire para cualquier ángulo de ataque. El gran freno de aire que recorre la espina de la aeronave no solo disminuye su velocidad, sino que también le permite una mayor maniobrabilidad en determinadas circunstancias. Dado que fue concebido desde un principio como un caza de superioridad aérea, se hicieron previsiones para la adaptación de cañones, una particularidad.
But for normal attack, the medium-range Sparrow missile, a development of those used over Vietnam, was to be carried two abreast each side of the plane's engine. The 4 Sparrows would be supplemented by 4 more Sidewinder missiles, shown here on the outside, used for short-range attack when the cannon was not suitable. Fully armed, the F-15 Eagle was a truly potent aircraft, which it was hoped could counter anything the Soviets could produce. Its distinctive twin fins sit each side of the complex jet exhaust and give the aircraft increased stability at high speed, and allow the pilot maximum control of the aircraft if it were to lose an engine in flight. All in all, McDonnell and the Air Force thought the Eagle would be the answer to fighter needs for years to come. But this was yet to be proven, and for the aircraft's first flight, it was shipped to Edwards Air Force Base. Here, the complex jet exhausts, sometimes known as turkey feathers, adjust as the engine starts for a ground test prior to its first flight. In case of brake failure, the plane is securely moored to the runway for the static engine test series. When the technicians are satisfied, the pilot, Irv Burrows, makes his inspection. You can get some indication of the aircraft's immense size as he walks up under the wing. With so much at stake, he's understandably cautious.
partían los primeros pasos. De nuevo los motores se encienden lentamente y el equipo de tierra se dispersa. Por primera vez el Eagle funciona bajo su propia fuerza. Incluso en tierra, el McDonnell F-15 Eagle es impresionante. Las marcas rojas en el ala, el ingreso, las puntas y las aletas solo se utilizaron en el prototipo y no están presentes en los modelos de producción.
Here, the massive Pratt & Whitney F-100
Aquí las gigantescas hélices turbo Pratt & Whitney F-100 del F-15, que son parte del secreto de su desempeño espectacular, se aceleran para aumentar el impulso de decolaje.
With the brakes released,
Con los frenos levantados, el piloto lleva el Eagle a su primer vuelo. Recorriendo la pista a toda velocidad, ala la palanca y el Eagle número 1 se eleva al cielo.
Though short, the Eagle's first flight was a total success. With the air brake raised, the plane slows for its approach. Here, as it begins its landing with an F-4 chase plane following, it almost looks small. Shown again in slow motion, you can appreciate the aircraft's great size. You can also see how the air intakes are adjusted to the horizontal, even though the aircraft is tilted back. With his first flight behind him, Irv Burrows must be a man who is full of sensations. But, quite clearly, his first impression is nothing but positive. During the months that followed, the process of testing continued relentlessly, as the prototype F-15s were put through every possible role it might be expected to perform. And by late 1974, it was ready to be commissioned by the Air Force, about to become its #1 fighter. On the 14th of November 1974, President Ford was on hand for the acceptance of the Air Force's first operational F-15. Soon the F-15, slowly but steadily, was going into service. One of the first challenges of the F-15 was to demonstrate its maneuverability.
Uno de los primeros retos del F-15 fue demostrar su maniobrabilidad frente a otros cazas, dado que a muchos cazas americanos anteriores les había hecho falta agilidad en Vietnam.
Perhaps the most agile of all American fighter aircraft.
Quizás el avión caza norteamericano más hábil después del F-15 era el Northrop F-5, un avión pequeño, audaz y liviano de motores gemelos. En muchos sentidos, compartía las características del MiG en Vietnam y en vuelo superaba a muchos cazas americanos antes de la llegada del Eagle. En este extraordinario documento fílmico, este Eagle, casi del doble del tamaño del F-5, logra mantener a uno en su mira todo el tiempo. Realmente una impresionante demostración de las capacidades del F-15.
About the same time, the Air Force received its first Eagles.
Casi simultáneamente con la llegada de los primeros Eagle a la Fuerza Aérea, se desarrollaba un nuevo F-15 para intentar superar las marcas de altitud que eran dominadas por el Phantom de la McDonnell y el Fox.
On a cold winter morning in January, the specially prepared F-15, which, to save weight, is not even painted except for the Streak Eagle badge, is rolled out onto the snow-covered runway. Symbolically enough, the chase plane,
Simbólicamente, el avión de persecución que seguiría al Eagle en su primera etapa de vuelo era una versión de reconocimiento del Phantom, que tenía la marca americana anterior. En una fría mañana de invierno, en enero, uno de los F-15 especialmente equipados sale a la pista. Está aún sin pintar, excepto por el logotipo del águila calva.
the Streak Eagle test series purpose.
La razón de la serie de pruebas bautizada como Águila Calva era romper varias marcas de velocidad en altura.
For several days, the three pilots constantly flew the Streak Eagle, gradually increasing the height and speed, and all three were to individually achieve specific records, with Roger Smith obtaining the final record for absolute height and speed.
Durante varios días, tres pilotos volaron el Águila Calva, incrementando gradualmente la altura y la velocidad. Los tres batieron marcas individuales, aunque el comandante Robert...
Steadily, the F-15 Eagle took up its roles with the tactical
Poco a poco, el F-15 Eagle tomó su lugar tanto en el comando de táctica aérea como en el comando de defensa aérea. Los pilotos y equipos de tierra debían familiarizarse con un equipo tan avanzado.
Eagles were soon deployed to Europe.
Pronto los Eagle fueron enviados a Europa. Aquí permanecen en la línea del frente oriental, el área sensible durante la Guerra Fría donde el Oriente se enfrentaba a Occidente diariamente. Allí la presencia de un piloto experimentado y de una buena aeronave podían aportar mucho a la preservación.
From various European bases, F-15 pilots would constantly train and exercise to ensure the peak of performance. Always on hand, they may seem leisurely now, but the tempo can speed as the need demands. Here, several F-15s go on a standard NATO exercise, pitting their aircraft's capabilities against other Allied planes. Each F-15 group is a self-contained unit. Ground staff for the F-15 are highly skilled technicians. And in today's Air Force, where the requirement is often more for skill than it is for strength, women work alongside men. Poetically, the F-15, which was originally designed as a specific air superiority fighter and not for any other role, now finds itself in an E-model similar to its Phantom forebear. The irony of this is that the Air Force wanted and got a dedicated fighter that could beat all oncomers. Now the brilliance of the original concept has been extended so that a two-seat version, the Strike Eagle, will be able to act as a tactical bomber, carrying enormous payload, but still be able to proceed onto the fighter mission as required. Little more could be asked of any fighter aircraft than that now available from the F-15. With its high-flying capacity, the Eagle is
Debido a su gran capacidad de vuelo, el F-15 también es utilizado como vehículo portador del misil antisatélites LTV-ASAD, diseñado para lograr lo que su nombre sugiere. Durante un tiempo, los satélites espías fueron una gran preocupación para Estados Unidos, pero en septiembre de 1985 se presentó una forma económica de deshacerse de ellos cuando un satélite americano que se acercaba al final de su vida útil fue derribado por un misil ASAD lanzado desde un Eagle a 24.000 metros de altura. El diseño básico del F-15 se presta para una cantidad considerable de adaptaciones posteriores. Actualmente se halla en evaluación una variante relacionada con despegues y aterrizajes cortos. Este modelo por computador muestra una posible variación del F-15. Camelos barridos delante del ala facilitarían la maniobrabilidad y exhaustos a chorro ajustables que alterarían la dirección de su impulso según los requerimientos de la aeronave en una situación dada. Pero la relación con su ancestro, el Eagle...
Three other nations also utilize the Eagle. Japan has approximately 100 in service, and it represents that nation's first line of aerial defense, replacing earlier F-4s. Israel also flies F-15 Eagles, and is one of only two nations to have used it in anger. Israel's F-15s have on several occasions dispatched Syrian MiGs with an almost routine efficiency. The third non-American user of the F-15 is Saudi Arabia. This nation's Eagles have also tasted blood in the sensitive area around the Persian Gulf. Iran, still flying F-4s purchased prior to the revolution, uses this aircraft to patrol the region, and in June 1984, a small group was sent to strike oil platforms in the Gulf. Patrolling Saudi F-15s were quickly advised of the Iranian aircraft by US AWAC radar aircraft, high in the sky over the Gulf. Forewarned, the Saudi pilots quickly located and identified the F-4s, two of which never made it home. US F-15s, like all other operational fighters, are constantly kept in a state of readiness with regular tests and competitions. The William Tell weapons meet between Canadian and American fighters is a competition that offers the most prestigious awards for the participants. It is a test not only of aircraft and pilots, but also of ground crews. Every aspect of aircraft efficiency is examined and points are scored relative to the overall performance and not just one moment of success. Increasingly, the F-15 Eagles are competing as the model takes over from earlier aircraft which stood to defend the North American continent. F-4 Phantoms and Convair F-106s, in conjunction with Canadian 101 Voodoos, will nevertheless give the Eagles opposition enough, because the prize was not just for the plane, but rather for the combination of man and machine, and the teamwork that keeps them in the air. Here, a supersonic drone is launched.
Allí, un zángano supersónico despega para hacer las veces de objetivo. Instantáneamente, un piloto de F-15 lo identifica en su pantalla superior y rápidamente dispara un misil Sidewinder de corto alcance.
With the job done, the Eagle returns.
Terminado el trabajo, el Eagle regresa para que tanto el tiro como los demás aspectos de la eficiencia puedan ser juzgados.
The standard of the competition is such that winning is an achievement to remember. In the frozen wastelands of Alaska, different technology represents the very front line of US air defense. Radar stations placed in the most inhospitable of environments constantly scan the skies over the Bering Straits for the approach of Russian aircraft. Even in times of peace, the two nations test each other in a routine that hopefully will not go beyond that of saber rattling. As the giant dish rotates, information on any Russian prowlers is collected and fed to patrolling F-15s. High in the cold sky, two Eagle drivers are sent to intercept, guided by constant updates from the ground control monitoring the Russian long-range bomber as it probes US airspace. The Russians' massive turboprop aircraft, with their tremendous range, constantly keep US air defenses on their toes. And there is no better weapon to respond to their presence than the F-15 Eagle.